Okay, in this video I want to show you how to use the pause marker and the clip points. There's certain applications that you would want to use this on, so I thought I would make a video on how it can be used. The first thing I have is a quilt set up, a piano set up. I'm using one of Karen Emerson's design. I forgot the name of it. It's in the free catalog, or we get it with our IQ, so I'm not sure of the name of it. Field of Flowers, that's it. But it is offset. It's a pattern that, let me see if I can zoom this up. And if you can see that the row that I have highlighted is the row that I'm going to be stitching, but I don't know if you can see this in the pattern, and I will make the suggestion because it was pointed out to me by Zoltan to offset this particular pattern by 50%. I've had this pattern for quite a while, and I never really stitched it out because I really didn't think it was all that pretty the way it shows up in the catalog. But when you offset this pattern, it takes on a whole different look. So I would, I would suggest that you go in and try that pattern because it's a really pretty pattern. But because of a pattern like this, it is very interlocking, and we want to make sure that things are lined up from row to row. And you can do this, you need to be checking along the way. But another good feature that we have on our IQ is to put a pause marker, stop the row from quilting, and check out how it's realigning to the top row. Many times when you have a quilt that's maybe 85, 100, the wider it is especially, the more off you might be with the pattern actually lining up to the first row. This isn't noticeable really in a smaller quilt, but some of these large quilts where we have dense patterns, sometimes they do tend to either drift down or get too close to the pattern above it, or you'll just see a few issues. And the reason this happens is because the machine is just moving in so many different directions for so long, and it's just building up. Any inaccuracies at all are just building up, and you'll start to notice it actually more towards the end of the pass. So this pause marker is really put in so that we can stop our machine and really I don't want to use the word recalculate, but realign it to where it needs to be to get the pattern to finish off, exactly where we want to use it. I'm going to show a couple different reasons for using it. One is if we want to make sure the patterns are interlocking nicely, like I'm doing with this pattern. But another reason to use it is if you want to make sure that your pattern is going to stop right where you want it to stop. Even though we give the IQ a measurement to quilt a pass like 85 inches or so, as you know, many times that measurement gets distorted for different reasons. And sometimes we want to make sure it goes from, 0.0 to 0.85, and we want it to stop right on the dime because, say, we don't have enough backing, we don't have, we want to quilt it right, we want the edge lines to be right inside of the quilt, we don't want to run off the quilt. There's just a lot of reasons why you would want to maybe clip your pattern at a particular point. So without talking any further, I'm going to go ahead and show you how this is done. I have quilted one row of this up. This is the first row of this pattern, so that when I quilt the next row, I can be checking to see if it's, the interlock is still good. And I will start checking it probably about halfway and show you how I use the pause marker. Okay, here I am getting ready to sew the second row. I'm going to go ahead, I have the second row highlighted, that's what I'm going to sew. I'm going to get ready to sew quilt. But now here, I'm going to hit continue, but right now, before I actually get started, I've got a clip mark here. It's called clip/mark. You want to clip that on, and I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, I now have, I'm bringing this forward here. Hopefully you can see this, but what shows up, of course, you've got your clip marks. You all are probably pretty well aware of these by now. But the pause marker is the purple line that runs across. Now, if I were to just drag that over and let's say I want to start checking alignment right about there. That's about 3/4 of the way in. If I start checking, if I just left it there, if you notice, this is highlighted. There's a little stop button. There's a little stop right up here. And if that's not highlighted, and I just drag that over, if I just drag that purple line over, and then I just continue and hit OK, that's actually not going to do anything. I have not activated that pause marker at this point. What I need to do to activate it is either to actually go inside the pattern. If I just hit, if I just click on the pattern, what I'm doing now, I'm going to zoom in, is actually selecting a spot on this pattern that I can tell it to stop at. So once I hit the pattern, once I put my cursor or my pen right on the pattern, you'll see part of it turn red and part of it turn blue. You'll also begin to see there's two purple lines now. There's a horizontal and a vertical. And where the machine is going to stop now is right at a particular point that I have put in place to tell it where to stop. Now, since I might need to realign, I like to pick a place that's not so noticeable if it has to overlap or whatever. So I try to pick maybe more of a vertical. Well, I can't really, I don't really know where you're going to be able to find in your pattern. Obviously, you're not all going to be using this pattern, but you want to find a spot in the pattern that if the machine does have to realign itself, it's not going to be all that noticeable. So I'm just going to say I'm going to put it right here. I have no idea if that's going to look good or not, but if it's going horizontal, if you've got a purple line horizontal and vertical, and you've got your little registration mark, purple registration mark, you can pretty much guarantee that that is going to stop right at the point, right here at this reference point, when it gets to that point when it's quilting. But say I really don't care about it getting to a particular point itself. I want to make sure that it stops just the first time it hits that line. I just highlighted the stop. It's if I unhighlight it, actually I just highlight it, so now it's the stop has a purple box around it. And if you notice now, there is not any highlighted. There's not any horizontal line. There's only a vertical line. And there's still a registration point. You always want to see that little registration point when you're doing these markers, because if you don't see it, chances are the machine's not going to stop. It needs a place for it to stop at. What this represents now, since I don't have the horizontal line, it's representing that as soon as it hits this line, this vertical line, the first place it's going to hit, and if you follow the pattern out, this stitching line right here, it's going to hit that line at this point. Okay, so it won't go any further. The machine will stop at that point. It won't come down and do, anything under here. And every time it hits that line, it's also going to stop. Like say I went ahead and paused it. It stopped there. I continued sewing. It sewed around this curve. As soon as it hits that line, doesn't matter if it's from the right or the left, it's going to stop. So we want to use this. I don't know really the scenario you would want to use this. I normally, I think it's a good idea to actually go into the pattern, but everybody has their reasons for using different functions on the IQ. So I'm not gonna stand here and tell you, when you would use it or when you wouldn't use it. But I like to pick a spot right within here, somewhere where I think is a good place to realign. So now I've got the registration, and it's going to stop exactly, see how it's red and green? It's going to stop exactly in that part of the pattern. And I hope I made that clear. If I highlight this, I'm going to take off that command, and now it's only showing a vertical, and it will stop when it hits the line. But if I go into the pattern, and if it's showing two lines, then I know it's going to stop at a particular spot in the pattern, not just when it crosses the vertical line, but when it crosses the, it needs to cross now the vertical and the horizontal to stop at that point. So maybe this will be a little bit clearer actually when we get to stitching it.